The silence over Redwood Hill Memorial Park wasn't peace, but suffocating tension. This funeral was no ordinary farewell. Special Agent Jake Vance stood stiffly at the edge of the grave, the folded flag heavy in his hands. Beneath him, Inspector Liam Kincaid, his mentor and anchor in Port Citadel's police department, was being lowered into the earth. Kincaid wasn't just a colleague. He was the man who dared to challenge the rot clawing at the city's core. Now he was gone. Behind Vance stood the embodiment of that rot, Sergeant Marcus Thorne. 2 decades of unchecked brutality had turned him into a predator, cloaked in a uniform. Everyone whispered about the suspects who never made it intact to booking, the traffic stops that became beatings, the way prejudice dripped from his every act. No one had stopped him. No one, except Kincaid. And now Kincaid was dead. Thorne lingered at the funeral, not in mourning, but in triumph. His immaculate uniform, his steady hand brushing the holstered weapon at his side, all of it screamed one thing: I won. You lost. But Jake Vance wasn't planning to lose. As the minister's voice droned faintly, Vance felt Thorne's hostility like a physical weight. The sergeant was waiting, testing, searching for weakness. Vance gave him none. His calm was deliberate, unnerving. Then it happened. Thorne's voice, sharp and cruel, cut through the eulogy. So, we're really burying a rat today, aren't we? Gasps rippled through the gathered crowd. Uniformed men stiffened, fury simmering, but no one moved. No one ever crossed Thorne. His sneer widened at their silence. He knew he was untouchable. Vance turned. His eyes locked on Thorne's, steady and fearless. No anger, no fear, just resolve. And for the first time, Thorne's smirk wavered. He stepped closer, voice dripping with venom. You and Kincaid thought you could clean up this city. Look where it got him. He leaned in, deliberate, vicious. Watch your back, agent. Wouldn't want you joining him. A direct threat. A public death promise. Still, silence ruled. No one moved, not even the captain. The system had protected Thorne too many times. But Vance had been counting on that. A raindrop darkened the stars on the folded flag. Vance let the silence stretch, his gaze unflinching. Then, a faint smile curved his lips. Not mocking, not amused, but knowing. Thorne's confidence cracked. What's so damn funny? He snapped, his voice trembling. Vance stepped forward, calm, steady. The quiet shift of dominance made Thorne flinch. For a split second, his hand twitched toward the grip of his weapon. And the world snapped. Hands where I can see them. The sound of weapons cocking erupted. Guns were drawn, not by the FBI, but by Thorne's own colleagues. For once, the shield of silence cracked. His arrogance had gone too far. Thorne froze. His hand hovered near the gun, but never cleared leather. His eyes widened as realization dawned. He wasn't feared anymore. He was cornered. This is a damn setup, he barked, voice straining. Vance didn't blink. You mean you pulling a gun on a federal agent at a funeral? That's setup. You think they'll arrest a cop here? Thorne spat, desperation bleeding through. Yes. The metallic snap of handcuffs answered. Captain Davies, long complicit in Thorne's abuses, stepped forward. His expression was stone. Marcus Thorne, you're under arrest for brandishing a weapon with intent to intimidate a federal officer. The words struck harder than the cuffs themselves. Thorne's face twisted in rage, in disbelief. His fall from power wasn't quiet. It was public, spectacular, irreversible. You can't do this, he roared. I didn't draw my gun. This is entrapment. Resist, and it gets worse, Davies warned coldly. Vance remained silent, watching the inevitable unfold. The predator who had haunted Port Citadel for decades was reduced to a man begging against inevitability. Thorne thrashed, desperate. I'll fight this. I'll take you all down. But the cuffs clamped tight. Vance stepped close, his words quiet, final. You're right about one thing. This was a setup. And the man who set it up, his eyes burned into Thorne's, was you. The crowd stood frozen. Officers shifting uneasily, as if they'd just witnessed history fracture. Rain began to fall harder, streaking across stone faces, blurring the lines between grief and justice. For a moment, time seemed suspended. Then a sharp crack split the air. Everyone flinched. It wasn't thunder. Somewhere at the far edge of the cemetery, a figure ducked behind a row of monuments, smoke still curling from the barrel of a rifle. The shot had missed, intentionally or not, but it was enough. Chaos erupted. Officers scrambled, some shouting to secure the perimeter, others rushing Thorne toward waiting vehicles. Vance spun, instincts firing, his hand on his weapon. This wasn't over, not by a long shot. Thorne's laughter, ragged and wild, cut through the storm. You think this ends with me in cuffs? You have no idea what's coming, agent. No idea. His words, twisted with triumph, rang out even as he was shoved into the back of the cruiser. Vance felt the weight of the moment tighten around him. Kincaid's death had been only the opening move. Now the board was shifting, the real players emerging from the shadows. And somewhere beyond the rain, the rifleman was still waiting. Vance continued, deliberate and even. You came here for a fight. You wanted to send a message that Kincaid's death didn't change anything, that your kind of cop was still in charge. You wanted to make sure I knew my place. Vance shook his head slowly. But you don't control the rules anymore. This time, everyone saw you for what you are. Thorne's frantic eyes darted to the officers holding him, then to Captain Davies, and finally to the other cops. Their gazes were no longer filled with silent complicity, but with open disgust. Get him out of here, Vance ordered the arresting officer. And just like that, the monster who had abused the power of the badge was led away in handcuffs at a funeral in front of his entire department. He was truly powerless. The courtroom was a sterile, unforgiving arena. Weeks later, Sergeant Marcus Thorne sat at the defendant's table in an orange jumpsuit, his hands shackled. The confident smirk was gone, replaced by hollow-eyed desperation. Across the room, Agent Jake Vance watched. This time, the escape routes were sealed. The prosecution was swift. Your Honor, the defendant, an officer sworn to uphold the law, was captured on video reaching for his weapon during a funeral in an act of intimidation against a federal agent. The security footage played, capturing the sneer, the threat, the fractional, damning movement toward the gun, and the immediate, unified reaction of the other officers. The judge leaned forward, her voice resonating with cool authority. This court does not take lightly the abuse of power by those entrusted to uphold the law. Mr. Thorne, you didn't just threaten a federal agent. You did so in front of your peers and grieving civilians. Your actions displayed a blatant disregard for both the law and human decency. Thorne's fists clenched, every remaining delusion crushed. Then came the final, devastating word. Guilty. The sentence, life in prison. As the guards approached, Thorne's eyes locked onto Vance. You did this, he hissed, his voice raw with hatred. Vance didn't blink. He simply replied, No, Marcus. You did this to yourself. The heavy courtroom doors slammed shut behind him. The system he had wielded as a weapon for so long had finally, definitively, turned on him. Captain Davies approached Vance in the silent courtroom, his face etched with years of compromise. You really think this changes anything? He asked, his voice gruff, yet lacking any true defiance. Vance paused, looking toward the looming symbol of justice above the judge's bench. No, he conceded, not everything, but it's a start. Vance walked toward the exit, passing a row of new recruits, their faces wide with shock and a dawning comprehension. They had just witnessed a lesson far more profound than any academy lecture. What happened when the wrong person wore the badge, and what happened when the right person was brave enough to stand against them. The system wasn't fixed overnight, but for the first time, a man like Marcus Thorne was held accountable. His reign of untouchable authority was over. And for Jake Vance, that was a victory worthy of the friend he had buried on Redwood Hill. The battles were far from over, but the message had been delivered. No one is untouchable anymore.